We are wrapping up our endocrine system chapter, talking about organs of the body that have a secondary endocrine function. So these are organs that are part of different systems of the body and have a primary function in those systems, but also are going to release some hormones and play a role as part of the endocrine system overall. So this is a great summary of that. So there are organs all over the body that have endocrine functions as well. So the heart is one of them. It is going to make this atrial natriuretic peptide, or ANP. That hormone is going to reduce blood volume, so how much blood you actually have. This has to do with water balance, so more water in your bloodstream is going to increase blood volume, less water in your bloodstream is going to decrease blood volume. Blood loss is also going to reduce blood volume. ANP is also going to reduce blood pressure as well as sodium concentration. So this atrial natriuretic peptide is going to reduce all of these different things, and they are all very closely interrelated to each other. Reducing sodium concentration means that we are going to reduce how much water is going back into the bloodstream and stuff like that. So these are all very, very closely related to each other. So there are special cells in the wall of the atria of the heart, which we'll learn in lab when we come back from spring break. But those special cells are going to secrete this hormone, signaling the kidneys to stop reabsorbing so much sodium, which decreases the amount of water that gets reabsorbed, which reduces blood volume and then reduces blood pressure in turn. ANP can also inhibit the secretion of renin, which is part of what's called the RAS system. We'll talk more in detail about that when we do the urinary system later on in the semester. And it can also help with vasodilation, which is making the blood vessels larger around. So it is going to help decrease blood pressure, blood volume, and blood sodium. In the GI tract, gastrointestinal tract, we have some different cells in there that are part of the endocrine system. These cells are going to be located in the mucosal layer of the stomach and small intestine. A lot of these hormones get secreted in response to eating a meal, and they're going to help with digestion. And so things secreted by the stomach are going to be gastrin. This is a peptide or protein-based hormone that is going to get produced in response to the stomach being distended, so kind of filling up and starting to stretch a little bit. That's going to release more hydrochloric acid to help break down that food that was just consumed. Secretin is another peptide hormone made by the small intestine as part of the acidic chyme. We'll talk more about that when we do the digestive system, but that's all the partially digested food and stuff. It's going to help release bicarbonate from the pancreas, which is going to neutralize that acid from the stomach, so that we are not destroying that hydrochloric or the lining of the intestines with that hydrochloric acid. This cholecystone, CCK, this is another peptide hormone coming from the small intestine that is going to increase the pancreatic enzyme secretion and help release bile from the gallbladder, which are both really important parts of digestion. So other hormones secreted from the intestines are going to help with glucose metabolism, so helping to stimulate the pancreatic beta cells to make insulin and reducing glucagon secretion from alpha cells. And they can also help enhance the sensitivity of insulin by the other cells. So we have this glucose-dependent insulinotropic peptide, GIP, and glucagon-like peptide 1 to really help control some of those pancreatic cells. Kidneys, very, very important part of very complex endocrine system pathways. Really, really important hormones being produced here. I've mentioned renin already. This is going to help release aldosterone. This is going to get released when there is less blood flowing through the kidneys. We're going to release that renin, which triggers the renin-angiotensin-aldosterone, or RAS system, which causes the kidneys to reabsorb more sodium and water, which increases blood flow and increases blood pressure. Kidneys are also going to help regulate blood calcium levels by producing calcitrol, which is a derivative of vitamin D3. This gets released in response to the secretion of parathyroid hormone. So really important for that calcium regulation. And they're also going to secrete erythropoietin, EPO, in response to low blood oxygen levels. Erythropoietin is going to cause our bone marrow to increase the production of red blood cells, or erythrocytes, which is going to help increase oxygen delivery to tissues. EPO can be used as a performance-enhancing drug, as a synthetic form of it, just like anabolic steroids can, because it is going to get more blood cells being produced and increase oxygen delivery to tissues. So it has been abused as a performance-enhancing drug before, and it is also banned in sports as well. Our skeleton itself also plays a role in endocrine function. Bone has been recognized for a long time as a target of hormones, but it was only recently that we discovered that it is also producing its own hormones. So this first one, FGF23, this is fibroblast growth factor 23. It's produced by bone cells in response to increased levels of vitamin D3 in the blood, or increased levels of phosphate. So it tells the kidneys to stop forming calcitrol from that D3 and to increase phosphorus excretion, so start getting rid of some of that excess phosphorus. And then we also have this osteocalcin. This is going to increase insulin production as well. It's produced by osteoblasts. So we're going to increase that insulin production so that these cells can get more of that glucose. It can also act on other tissues to increase their sensitivity to insulin, and therefore how easily they're able to use that glucose. Adipose tissue itself, even though it's not a specific organ, adipose tissue is going to produce and secrete some hormones involved in lipid metabolism and storage. One of these is leptin. This is a protein created by the adipocytes that's going to circulate proportionally to levels of body fat. So leptin is released in response to consuming food and actually acts in the brain. So it's going to bind to some neurons involved in energy uptake and expenditure, so energy usage. And that binding of leptin is going to cause the brain to feel satisfied after a meal, which reduces appetite. It also seems like it maybe is going to trigger the sympathetic nervous system to regulate bone metabolism. So we are maybe changing how that bone metabolism is happening directly after a meal. And then we also have this adiponectin. This is going to reduce insulin resistance. So this is going to help cells be less resistant to insulin. It can also help protect blood vessels from getting super inflamed and protect against atherosclerosis. So the levels of this are much lower in people who are obese, and they will go up following weight loss. Our skin is also going to produce a hormone. This is cholecalciferol. This is a way of modifying and getting some vitamin D. So this is producing the inactive form of vitamin D3, which is this chemical here. So when cholesterol is present in the epidermis and it gets exposed to that UV radiation, it's converted into this hormone here, which enters the blood and then goes to the liver, where it's converted to an intermediate form and then sent to the kidneys. and then finally gets converted to calcitrol, which is the active form of vitamin D3 that our body wants to use for calcium absorption and immune system function. There are some studies showing low levels of vitamin D are associated with increased risks of cancer, severe asthma, and multiple sclerosis. Deficiency in children can cause rickets, and in adults, osteomalcia, which are both bone deterioration. The thymus, as well as some other organs. The thymus is primarily an organ of the immune system. It is much, much larger and far more active during infancy and early childhood, and starts to atrophy or shrink and break down as we get older. As part of the endocrine system, it's producing a group of hormones called thymosins. They are going to help the development of what are called T lymphocytes. These are an important part of the immune system for attacking pathogens that show up. We're not really sure all of their roles and stuff like that at this point in time. We need a lot more research into this, but it is very clear at this point in time they're an important part of immune system development. These hormones have been found in other tissues outside of the thymus, and they have a wide variety of functions, so these cannot be strictly categorized as hormones of the thymus, but it does create them. Our liver is another big one, responsible for some hormone production: insulin-like growth factor 1, angiotensin, thrombopoietin, hepcidin. So these are going to have a lot of different impacts in the body. So we have either hormones or hormone precursors. So insulin-like growth factor is going to be the immediate stimulus for growth in the body. So it is going to kind of help signal some of those growth hormones to be produced. Angiotensin is the precursor to or angiotensinogen is the precursor to angiotensin that we talked about earlier. That's going to help increase blood pressure. Thrombopoietin causes the bone marrow to create more cells that create platelets. Hepcidins block the release of iron from cells in the body to help regulate iron homeostasis. Iron is really, really essential for oxygen uptake by the red blood cells. And that wraps up our endocrine system.